Figures released by the federal government indicate that Nigeria has lost at least 612 persons to flooding and 1.4 million people displaced. This is according to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, at the weekly ministerial media briefing at the Presidential Villa Abuja. Adesua Omara was there.
Data from the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs as at October 24 reveals out of the 612 lives lost, Jigawa accounts for the single highest deaths by state with 91 casualties. Of the over 3 million persons affected, Anambra accounts for 729,000 persons. More than 500,000 persons have been displaced in Anambra out of the 1.4 million displaced persons across the country. With 376 persons injured in the state, Anambra also accounts for the highest number of those injured out of the close to 3,000 nationwide. The indicators reveal Imo State has the highest numbers of houses and farmland damaged. No state has been spared in the 2022 flooding. However, 28 states and the Federal Capital Territory Abuja have received relief of food and non-food items from the federal government. Akwa Ibom, Cross Rivers, Kwara, Zamfara, Katsina, Kebbi, Borno, and Gombe are the 6 states yet to receive relief from the federal government. Edwin Clark, leader of the Pan-Niger Delta Forum, had earlier described the Humanitarian Affairs Minister as inhumane towards victims of the flood in Bayelsa and other areas in the southern region of the country. It also comes after the state governor, Duoye Diri, says no assistance has come from the federal government 4 weeks into the crisis.
It's about a month now that Bayelsa has been sitting under waters. So I have made calls, I have appealed, and up until this moment, we don't have one federal government very senior official in the mold of maybe the president, the vice president, or the minister, just to give us hope, encourage us, and deploy the federal might to our state to say we stand with you.
The Humanitarian Affairs Minister responds to the criticisms.
It will also interest you to know that Bayelsa is not even amongst the 10 most hit. I think Jigawa is number 1. And we have taken intervention to Bayelsa. And it's still ongoing. We are using the Nigerian Air Force to access the inaccessible areas. We have officers in all the states, and they are supporting the state officials to give support to these victims.
How does the country ensure that the relief gets to those who need them and prevent a repeat of the COVID-19 palliatives, which were hoarded and stockpiled in warehouses?
This time around, we're engaging everybody that is a stakeholder in a state. Before going for the intervention, we have written letters to different groups, the state government to start with, faith-based organizations, NGOs and CSOs, and community leaders.
The resistance of populace to early warning instructions, inadequate dam monitoring and maintenance, as well as lack of flood risk awareness are some of the major challenges to reducing and mitigating flood risk in Nigeria. The minister is advocating enforcing evacuations as well as individual and collaborative preventative measures to forestall future devastating outcomes to flooding in Nigeria. Adesua Omorwan, Arise News.
Well, Bayelsa may not be among the top 10 most affected states according to the government, but several people there have lost their lives and property from floods. Minister of State for Petroleum Resources Tim Silvers described the effects of the flood on Bayelsa and the East-West Road as devastating and heartbreaking. The minister donated relief materials to displaced people and said the federal government is ready to partner with states for lasting solution to the disaster.
The water is receding slowly in Bayelsa State, but the height is still a menace to society as more persons run to camps for the internally displaced. The Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Temepere Malin Silva, is accompanied by the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, Simbi Kesie Wabote, to a failed portion of the road leading to Amasoma, where a makeshift scaffold is constructed. Next is Tombia in Yenagoa local government area, where the water is still too high for comfort. The minister and his entourage proceed to the Okobe axis of the east-west road, already battered by the ravaging flood.
We have given directive to the NDDC and the Niger Delta Ministry to ensure that the repairs on this road are completed expeditiously. But this, of course, is beyond what we are talking about, beyond alleviation on a yearly basis, because this happens every year. This is not about any political party. This is not about any campaign. This is about Nigeria and the well-being of Nigerians. And that's really what we have come. The Federal Executive Council has already taken steps to ensure that the devastation that we see here is ameliorated as quickly as possible. But going beyond that, we must find a permanent and lasting solution to this problem.
At the camp for internally displaced persons in Igbogini, Temepere Silva donates food, medicine, and mattresses laden in trucks. He does same for the displaced persons at the Oxbow Lake camp.
We want to sincerely thank him, and we hope that this will go a long way to alleviating their plight, because the state government alone cannot do everything. And today they are here to assist us. We're truly grateful. We appreciate.
If you fly over Bayelsa, you see the extent of the problem. It is very devastating and heartbreaking. And that is why all of us must come together and find a solution to this problem, not only for this year, but what is the permanent solution to the flooding problem? The devastation is total. The federal government is ready to join hands with the state government to find a solution to this problem. And please, you appeal to Bayelsans, appeal to politicians in Bayelsa to stop politicizing a very serious problem like this.
Ovieteme George, Arise News.
Dr. Bati, a lot to talk about this.
Okay, first, yesterday we had a conversation with the governor of Bayelsa State, Governor Dohe Duri, and he made it very clear that no major federal government official had visited Bayelsa State. And we have pointed out to him that the federal government had been blaming the state governments for being negligent in being alive to their responsibilities. And he said no, he didn't want to go into that blame game scenario. Because we're dealing with tragedy, we're dealing with devastation. But it's good this morning to see that finally a prominent federal government official showed up in Bayelsa State in the person of former governor of Bayelsa State, currently Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Chief Temepere Silva. Well, Chief Temepere Silva, considering the fact that he's a stakeholder in Bayelsa State, probably should have visited much earlier than this. He probably should not have waited for the governor to say, come to Macedonia and help us before showing up. But of course, he made all the right noises for the cameras. He struck the right notes in calling for foreign and state, federal government and state partnership, and how long-term solution should be found to this. But those are just the usual things that you say in front of television. What is established is how, the federal government has not been up and down in responding to the cry for help by the various states of the federation. In that report by Adesua Omoruan, some states have not even received any kind of relief. But to go to the heart of the matter, as presented by the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Mrs. Farouk. Well, I think it's unfortunate that what we're doing now is the federal government, the mindset in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs is to approach this disaster, this tragedy that has affected over 1.4 million persons who have been displaced, over 600 people that have died as a result of the floods from the perspective of federal character. In the sense that what the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs was saying, more or less, is very strange. In response to Chief E.K. Clark, who had before now said, look, people in Niger Delta are suffering, and the federal government has not been responding. And here comes the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Shadiya Farouk, telling us that, in fact, in the ranking, Bayelsa State is not even among the first 10 most affected states, and that Jigawa State is the most affected state. And she gave other briefing, the criteria that they have used to determine which set of Nigerians are more important than another set of Nigerians. The amount of, farmlands that have been affected, the number of persons that have been displaced, the number of houses that have been destroyed, the number of deaths recorded. And that if you look at these statistics, Jigawa is far more affected than Bayelsa State. Now, what is that supposed to mean to intelligent people? Look, every Nigerian life matters. Every Nigerian life matters. It's not a question of, 10 people died in Jigawa State, so federal government should attend to Jigawa State first. In Bayelsa, it's 10 people, it's 5 people that died. No, that's not leadership. That's like turning this disaster, into a federal character thing, into saying some Nigerians are more important than others. So the argument put up by the Shadiya Farouk, does not negate the point made by Chief Edwin Clark. Wherever any Nigerian is, whether it's in Jigawa or Benue or Rivers, the federal government has no business saying there is more here than there. No, every Nigerian life is important. Even in communities where, even if it is one person that died, that Nigerian life is important. So when next the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs comes to give briefing, please, she should be prepared. And she should not say things that don't make sense. That's number one. Number two, in terms of the federal government's response, we've been told that there is a committee that is led by the Minister of Water Resources that has been mandated by the President to provide a comprehensive plan of action in 90 days. Now, that committee is led by both Suleiman Umar, I think that's his name, the Minister of Water Resources, and Shadiya Farouk, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. I hope this is not the kind of mindset that is guiding that committee that is supposed to supply a comprehensive plan of action within the framework of 90 days that they have been given, where 90 days is quite long. By the time the 90 days is over, if I will be preparing for the next rainy season, I will probably repeat
the next flood.
The next flood. And then, of course, that plan of action will be overtaken by elections. Another government will come in, and then we'll sit here next year and be looking for that comprehensive plan of action that the next government may not even know where it is. Can we be a bit more, serious? Can we show better empathy and not hold press conferences where we're justifying, poor leadership? That's my point.
For me, it's obvious that we've politicized the flood. And I ask, do our leaders really understand what nationhood is all about? You see, these vestiges of politics have really destroyed our medulla so much that we don't think beyond the threads of politics and political parties any longer. But we forget in a hurry that politics is very, very ephemeral. In the 80s, did we have the APC or PDP or Labour? No. We had other political parties. And these political parties will come and go. So for us to see national chaos and we look on the line of politics, it is very sad. And that's why I'm shell-shocked that all the minister could do is to look for a ranking of states most affected. So what have you done to the states most affected? Coupled with what have you done to Bayelsa State? Does that exonerate the fact that Honorable Minister of Humanitarian Resource, there's one of the biggest humanitarian crises in your country, and you've not called one of the governors, as he said yesterday, of the state involved? What has that done? The president too, has the vice president too not reached out to the governor? How does that exonerate the fact that you have not done what you ought to do? We need to remember Nigeria is for all of us, and we just want the betterment of this country. But these political divisions along political lines will not take this country further. No relief materials, nothing put in place. The other day, the governor of Bayelsa said he had to challenge the Minister of Water Resources, although he didn't mention his name, when the Minister of Water Resources said this was not caused by the Lagdo Dam. Is that same Minister of Water Resources that is sitting on the panel to know what will happen, to determine what will happen in 90 days? If a minister that is in denial of the problem is to want to solve the problem, then your guess is as good as mine on the solution of the problem. And for the Minister of State that went there yesterday of Petroleum Resources, kudos to him, but he said this is not about politics, but you can see his cap was full-on political mode campaigning. Let's ask, did the minister visit the governor? Because if you go to commiserate with somebody in the states, you are supposed to visit the governor, since he's the chief host. Because if the minister visited the governor, I would have thought that both of them will have been able to go to those IDP camps together. So what are we saying? You get? So what are we saying? And it's a big question. Did the minister visit the governor? Did he even tell the governor that he's coming to his state? You see, we can't live in a country where it is either black or white because you are not in my political party. We can't move a country forward that way. And the problem is we are fast going along that way. It is always, oh, if you are not part of us. And you see, this so-called political division is the height of hypocrisy because all of these political elites intermingle when their interests align. And that's why it behoves on you, Nigerians, in 2023. What are you going to do for yourselves? And I ask you, because the only thing you can do for yourself is to vote your conscience and ensure you vote and ensure you interrogate manifestos. All we just want is people that have a heart for the country, because this country is the best kept secret in the world. It's a great country filled with a lot of potential that can be rekindled when we get leadership right and we have people that truly have a heart for this country. Please, don't forget Nigeria. Leaders of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, is asking the Supreme Court to set aside the ruling of the Court of Appeal which stopped him from enjoying the freedom guaranteed by the Court of Appeal. In a notice of the appeal filed by his counsel, Mr. Michael Zekome, Kanu is asking the Apex Court to restore the efficacy of the judgment of the Court of Appeal. Among other grounds, he argued that the Court of Appeal erred in law when it granted the stay of execution of a judgment in criminal appeal. Dr. Bati, we're going through this all over and over again.
Okay. You recall that on October 13, a three-man panel of justices of the Court of Appeal, in looking into the Nnamdi Kanu matter, ruled that the Nigerian government, the federal government of Nigeria, erred in law by engaging in the extraordinary rendition of Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya, and that extraordinary rendition was in violation of due process, of international conventions, and specifically of the Terrorism Act. So, and to that extent, the Court of Appeal, their lordships dismissed all the 7 charges against Nnamdi Kanu. They also questioned the jurisdiction of the lower court in inquiring into the matter on the basis, of course, that once the foundation of the process is flawed, then, of course, you can raise issues about jurisdiction and other associated matters. And so their lordships ruled accordingly. But that ruling was not respected by the federal government of Nigeria, because the Ministry of Justice and the Office of the Attorney General said that Nnamdi Kanu still had other issues to answer, including the fact that it was a risk flight and that he violated the terms of his bail conditions. The National Security Council also met twice and also took the same position as the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice. And on the basis of that, the federal government of Nigeria decided to go to court. First, to challenge the ruling of the Court of Appeal on October 13 and to apply for a stay of execution of the judgment. Now, on October 28, the Court of Appeal, also sitting in Abuja, reversed itself by granting, more or less, the order of stay of execution that had been applied for by the federal government of Nigeria. And of course, immediately, the Nnamdi Kanu team, speaking through Michael Zekome, who thought that the decision of the court erred in line with the facts, erred in issues of fact, and also fundamental law, decided to proceed immediately to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of Nigeria is the apex court. In the hierarchy of courts, you can't appeal beyond the Supreme Court. And then as somebody who has a case in court, you have fundamental human rights to exhaust the entire legal process. So what counsel to Nnamdi Kanu have decided to do is to exhaust the entire process and go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court will be pronouncing in this particular matter on certain issues, whether indeed the stay of execution, for the execution of the judgment of October 13 granted by the Court of Appeal on October 20, whether it's valid in law and according to the facts. The second issue that the counsel to Nnamdi Kanu are asking the Supreme Court to decide upon is also to decide that no court in Nigeria should henceforth, try Nnamdi Kanu, having been declared, having been freed from the principal charges. That's the case that has been taken to the Supreme Court by Ejiofor and Ozekome, both counsel involved in the matter. But there's also another appeal before the Supreme Court by the federal government of Nigeria, asking that the ruling of the Court of Appeal on October 13 should be set aside. So it will be very interesting to see what their lordships, at the Supreme Court of Nigeria decide in looking at all the issues that have been raised: jurisdiction, extraordinary rendition, fundamental human rights, and the validity of the lower courts within the hierarchy of courts. So the matter going to the apex court is not a problem. In fact, it was expected. But we hope that the apex court will consider the matter expeditiously, since there is so much that is involved in this matter, both from the public policy side and also from jurisdiction and also the fundamental human rights of the person involved.
I must have to say, this matter definitely is another seminal moment for Nigeria. And a lot of Nigerians are waiting and looking at the ruling, of the court, of the apex court in this regard. Because when you look at the matter critically, once the appeal court ruled, the federal government went back, got a stay as the execution of that ruling. And this has been pushed to the apex courts. That's one part of it. Would exhaust, the judicial interplay as regards this matter. But also, in settling this matter, there have always been overtures to President Muhammadu Buhari by some Igbo leaders, who one of them, and I'm sure we didn't do due recognition, passed recently. That's former First Republic Minister Amaechi, passed recently, and where they were calling for a political solution. But, yes, it's been pushed back to the legal process, and let's see what we will do. So it's going to be very interesting how it goes this time in Nigeria, but hopefully, after the apex courts, I just hope we don't have to go through the rigmarole again. I just hope the rule of law will be respected in this country, because we know where we started from. We know the initial ruling of the appeal court, and we know how the federal government kicked against it before they got that stay of execution. How the National Security Council came out to say, oh, no, he's a flight risk, he's this, he's that. At variance with the ruling of the court. before they got a stay of execution, which a lot of people will say, yeah, it's within their legal bounds. So let's see how this pans out. But we'll move on to the next story. United Arab Emirates mega carrier Emirates has suspended flight operations indefinitely to Nigeria over its trapped fund. The airline has earlier announced that it will suspend its operations from October 29 over the failure of government to make dollars available for the foreign carriers to repatriate revenue, during which a meeting held at the National Assembly recently between the legislators and Minister of Aviation and aviation stakeholders, including airlines and travel agents. Emirates operated twice daily to Lagos and once daily to Abuja, recording 21 flights every week with a high load factor. But an attempt to book flight from its portal between Dubai and Abuja or Lagos failed because the airline did not indicate that it still operates for those destinations and has kept mum after the initial announcement during aviation stakeholders meeting in Abuja. However, in a statement by Emirates yesterday, the airline said it had no option but to suspend flights to and fro from Nigeria from the 29th of October to mitigate against further losses moving forward. Dr. Abati?
Well, this is the second time that Emirates Airlines will be suspending its flights to Nigeria. In August, yes, that was the first time it suspended its flights. And collectively, the foreign airlines operating out of Nigeria had complained that all of them together could not repatriate a total of about $500 million. In the specific case of Emirates Airlines said about $85 million was trapped. Okay, this was going to translate into hardship for travelers in and out of Nigeria, and the federal government waded into the matter. The CBN then said, well, it was willing to make available $265 million, first tranche, and then another $120 million to these foreign airlines for them to be able to repatriate their funds. Now, what Emirates Airlines is saying this time around is that up till October 29, the CBN, the Nigerian government, had not honored that promise. And so it was left with no option but to suspend its flights a second time, in November now, with effect from October 29, in and out of Nigeria. Well, the matter is not as straightforward as it is, because there have been several meetings held on this. The House of Representatives even waded into the matter and called all stakeholders together to look at what exactly the problem is. In the course of all these discussions, back and forth, Hadi Sirika, the Minister of Aviation, has asked court to say that the Nigerian government will not succumb to blackmail from the foreign airlines. These foreign airlines have been asked to make use of the IRA window to go and source foreign exchange, the same manner in which Nigerian airlines, local airlines source funds, at market-determined exchange rate. That, I think, is one point of disagreement. Two, at the stakeholders meeting that was called by the House of Reps, presided over by Speaker of the House, Honorable Gbajabiamila, the airline operators, the local ones, raised the issue. Allen Onyema, for example, the chairman of Airpeace, was quoted in the papers as saying that the foreign airlines are stigmatizing Nigeria and that the Nigerian government should not succumb to blackmail. He also accused the foreign airlines of violating the terms of the Bilateral Air Services Agreement, BASA, whereby these foreign airlines have more frequencies, operate more frequencies into Nigeria, and locally owned airlines are at a disadvantage. Third, he also accused them of hiking passenger rates, that's ticket fares, whereby, for you to go to London now, you have to pay about 2.3 million naira for a flight of just about 5-6 hours. And in his own view, and the view of other airline operators of Nigeria, that's the name of their association, AON, they think that the foreign airlines are blackmailing Nigeria, stigmatizing Nigeria, violating BASA, and that the Nigerian government should not succumb to blackmail. Maybe these are the issues involved. Okay? And maybe these are the issues that have led to a situation whereby even the promises made by the federal government of Nigeria have not been met. But to the extent that all of this may well translate into hardship for the average Nigerian traveler, I think that the option of dialogue, negotiation, trying to resolve all the issues that have been raised by both the foreign airlines operating in Nigeria and the local airline operators of Nigeria should be inquired into. And the Minister of Aviation should not take the hardline position to say you can't blackmail us, you can't blackmail Nigeria. There is nothing that cannot be resolved through negotiation and good reason.
I mean, but the truth has to be said. There's a foundational problem to this. The foundational problem is forex scarcity in Nigeria. We don't have the forex to be able to pay and meet our obligations. That's why the CBN has dragged its foot as regards this for a while. There's the other factor as regards the airline. Yes. And on that factor, we need to stand up tall for our country. And I remember where Hadi Sirika took that tough stance, that except this BASA agreement was recognized for air peace, because I remember that case particularly, to get the same, an appreciable level of frequency flying into the Middle East, into flying United Arab Emirates. And they got some level of frequency. And we also need to stand up tall for our country as regards our local airlines that are currently told countries like the UK to respect the BASA agreement, and they've not responded. I mean, it's on record that Air Peace had made overtures to the UK so that they can start flying into the UK, but they've not even responded at all. But their own foreign flights coming here. We need to put our foot down on the ground as Nigerians. We can't be pushed around. We've got a right, just like other nations have got a right too. But as regards our forex problem, then how do we solve it? There's a great argument as which local airlines are sourcing forex through this window, this black market window, which the CBN keeps insisting is just 5% of the market. But if you want to get anything done, that's where you get the forex from. Because if you go to the INE window, you're going to wait as long as anything before you can get anything out of that INE window. There's that. So we've got multiple problems. And coupled with that, there's also got diplomatic problems with the UAE. You can hardly get a visa into Dubai now. It is that difficult. In fact, there's a lull on the system as regards getting a visa into UAE. At first, there was a threshold, you must be beyond 30, you must be beyond 40. Now there's a law. In fact, there's a story going on around now that people, Nigerians that live in UAE, they're refusing to renew their work visas. So as regards this, how do we come in strong? The chairman in charge of the Diaspora Commission has done, but we need to be able to carry our weight. What's our Foreign Affairs Minister doing? We need to be able to sort this out, and we need to be able to negotiate too from a place of strength. We must stand up tall for our country. And how the CBN is going to get that USD out is problematic. I don't know. The CBN, I know, doesn't print dollars. How are they going to fulfill that? Time will tell. But if the CBN governor had promised he was going to sort it out at some point and release some USD, how he's going to sort it out depends on him. So it's a multiple-pronged problem, but in all of this, I'm a Nigerian first, and I'll take sides with my own country. I will be objective. Where we have problems, yes, we should fix it. We should meet our obligations in dollars. Nobody should muscle our airlines around. But most importantly, we should also see it from a position of strength and reason.